short climbers are good at getting scrunchy and tall climbers are good at getting extended, right? Well, no, not always. Actually, not even most of the time. Believing that, especially if you're one of those tall or short climbers, is a trap. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to make sure you don't fall into that trap, or if you already have, how to get out of it, so that we can all extend our useful range. I'm Chris Hampton. You're watching Take Tips from Power Company Climbing. Let's get into it. Now, over the course of hundreds of in-person sessions over the past decade, I've met many short climbers who think they're good at getting high feet. Most tall climbers think they're good at using low feet. And some actually are, but the fact is, most just aren't. Sure, they might choose slightly higher or further feet than the average size climber chooses, but relative to their size, their range is usually pretty similar. Now, here's what I mean. This shorter climber is only high stepping to about mid-thigh height, same as the taller climber. Yes, the foothold is higher, but relative to their size, the two climbers have basically the same range. Now, why does that even matter? Well, it matters because shorter and taller climbers are told, or tell themselves, this story that they're already good at it, naturally, because of their size, so they rarely, if ever, explore further. And because of this, they're held back from actually improving their range. Now, it's likely that if you climb in an area that rewards high steps and big lock-offs, like the Blue Mountains or the New River Gorge, that you've adapted to being good at getting bunched up, particularly if you're average height or taller. But if you're short and you climb in those areas, it's possible that you've actually gotten better at getting stretched out. But the bunchy nature of the climbing is, in reality, just a comfortable range for you. And even you, the short climber who uses high feet, are leaving options for even higher feet on the table. And the same goes for taller climbers. You skip cruxes and excel in areas that reward climbing tall, so the story you tell yourself, or that you've been told, is that you're good at getting stretched out. But we're not falling for that. Because the best climbers, they can get bunchy, they can get extended, and they know when to employ each skill. And we're going to learn how to do that too. Now, if we look at the full span of the average climber, their useful range is a little smaller than that. And the range they regularly choose is even smaller still. On average, the useful range is probably around the wrists and ankles, and the often chosen range around mid-forearm and mid-shin. Now, I know that might seem harsh, but in all but 2 or 3 cases over nearly 30 years of climbing, when someone says they're fully extended, it's pretty easy to see that they have another 6 to 8 inches before that's actually true. Consider checking next time you say fully extended. I bet you're not. In this useful range, many climbers refer to it as the box that we climb in. And I've used this term for a long time myself, but it's misleading. We don't actually have access to everything inside the box that's created by our widest useful range. There's a limit to not only how extended we can get, but also how bunchy we can get. For the average climber, their useful range on the inside of the box seems to be a little inside of shoulder width, and somewhere around mid-thigh. And any holds inside of that often don't even register as options. However, when we look at the common chosen range, many of us tend to choose holds not much higher than our knees and only just outside of our shoulders. And so I now prefer to look at this not as a box at all, but as a frame. And while the best climbers have very wide frames that they move in, most of us have frames that are way too narrow. We're leaving a lot of options on the table. So what, if anything, can we do about it? Well, let's start by first understanding what the edges of the frame can do for us. Okay, so the outside of the frame is how extended you can be and still have some semblance of control. And knowing those limits does several things. It allows you to anticipate how much you have to give to a big move. It allows you to know what you need to do with your feet to make that position advantageous. And spending time in and improving at these extended positions will not only reduce hesitation when faced with a big move and then allow you to create tension or generate momentum from these positions, but it will also open up new ways to get through every section of every climb you do forever. On the flip side, the inside of the frame is how bunchy you can be and still be effective. Can you actually load your feet when they're at the same level as your hands? Or how high is too high? Does it feel more chaotic or stressful when you get scrunched? Getting better at these bunched up positions is going to give you more options in more situations. And the interesting thing is that very often the two work together. On this boulder, I do a big move that gets me really extended, followed by a move in which I have to continue holding that tension. And now I have to get and load a high foot from that extended position. And that's actually pretty common. You can see it here on a different angle wall. I do a series of big moves that first gets me extended from fingers to toes, and then with feet that feel moderately high, gets my wingspan extended. What that results in, as it very often does, is having to get a foot quite high and then load it in order to do the next move. And like I talked about in this video, hard climbing is very often about moving from a not quite stable position through an unstable path to another not quite stable position. It's common that those moves are big and then followed by having to get your feet close to your hands. So learning just one expanded range is not enough. We need to be able to use both. So the question is, how can we, 1, avoid falling for the trap of these stories, and 2, widen our frames or improve our useful range? And the best way I've seen, by far, to accomplish both things is to use a drill that, in my opinion, might be the most underrated skill drill in all of climbing. We call it one size fits all. And this drill is going to do 4 main things for you. First, it'll help you learn the limits of your current useful range, making you better at sizing up big dead points and able to see the high foot options you already have access to. Next, you'll begin to understand how to use position, tension, and rhythm to exploit all of the corners and edges of your frame. And while doing so, you'll widen that frame, giving you more options for potential solutions. And particularly if you're one of those tall or short climbers we've talked about, you'll learn how to avoid the stories that can so easily hold you back from improving. So what you're going to do is follow the set hand sequence on a boulder, but use any feet. First, you'll climb the problem, trying to be as extended as you possibly can for each move. That means for each move, you'll have to make a decision. Look up at your handhold and then figure out where the most distant foot you can use is. It can be directly below or out to the side or anywhere, as long as it challenges you to get extended. And feel free to walk your feet around on other holds in order to get into position to try the move. And if you get set up and decide that the move is going to be easy, feel free to reset. Walk your feet even further away before you try the move. Now here's the real magic. Evaluate your choices. Did you do the move easily or did you fall off? Did you fall off because you lost tension or chose a poor position? Or is the hold actually just too far away to keep your foot on? And now redo the problem or the individual moves, making better or at least different choices. Next, we repeat the problem again, but doing every move as scrunchy as possible. And you can match hand foot, or you can even step your foot above your hands. What we're looking for here are positions you're a little uncomfortable in, but that you can still make work for the sequence that you're doing. And the goal isn't just to get your feet as high up the wall as possible. We're not looking to walk your feet way above your head and bat hang off of a jug. Instead, it's to find challenging positions that feel a little too bunchy for you and then find a way to make them work. And now I'd start out by doing one size fits all on relatively easy terrain. It's going to be physically challenging even on the biggest holds. As you get used to it there, you can move it to harder warm-ups and then to moderates and beyond. And you're going to find that useful range changes as the hand and foot holds get worse, not just as the grade gets harder. So once you're doing it well on good holds, move it to worse holds. And that's going to help it translate to hard climbing outside. And this is going to work best on a spray wall or densely set bouldering wall. You'll certainly still get benefit from doing it on set commercial boards, but keep in mind that if you're on a board with a strict grid, there are going to be big gaps between the options you can and can't use. So you might not be able to maximize your useful range. For instance, I can use this foot without too much trouble, but the next further foot is a little beyond my full extension or my useful range, so I wish there was a foot somewhere about right here. And remember, you get to decide where to put your feet, essentially choosing the body positions. If you're switching up the angles and grip types enough, it's likely that you'll be constrained in a realistic enough way that you don't always get your top choice of body position. But you'll also have to use some intention not to just default to where you're strongest. And honestly, you should be doing this on every drill you ever do. You'll also want to get plenty of rest between efforts and don't feel like you have to do entire problems. You can pick individual moves or sequences that you have a hard time with and spend your time on those, but keep the goal of the session in mind. Like I said, it's physically challenging, so if you get too sucked in, your session might just be derailed. Now this drill and getting better at climbing both extended and bunched not only prepares you for the cruxes of boulders and roots that will demand this of you, but it also gives you more options on nearly every single move you're ever going to do. And more options often means that you'll more quickly find the method that suits you, and you won't get shut down on as many moves at your top level. And by gradually learning what's actually possible for you in both directions, you're better prepared to not believe those stories that you're just naturally good at this skill. Now you know you're good at it because you've actually worked for it. And if you're someone who feels like you've got lots of options open to you, but still can't seem to get the moves done, this video might just help you figure out where to start, literally, in order to close the deal.